today's true crime video. I was actually this morning looking through cases and just, had a feeling of like, I want to make another true crime video, and I came across a case that I had no clue happened, to the point where I read this article and I had to like Google it again just to make sure that it was a real thing. As you can tell by the title, we are going to be talking about the kidnapping of Frank Sinatra Jr. This is a little bit different from my normal true crime videos in that it's not as scary or disturbing. There's no death or anything like that. It's just a couple of knuckleheads. But I thought this was such an interesting case because maybe some of you like me had no idea that this happened. So I was like, let's talk about it. So it is a very, very interesting story and case. So I have my notes here as per usual. So when you see me looking down, that is what I'm looking at. Okay, so without further ado, let's just get started with the case. So we are going back in time to 1963. And yes, if you haven't figured it out by now, this is the son of one of the most famous singers in the history of the world, Frank Sinatra. So Sinatra Jr. was 19 at the time in 1963, and at the time he was just starting to enter the music scene himself. So let's talk about the brains behind this operation. So let's talk about the man by the name of Barry Keenan. He was born in 1940, making him 23 years old at the time that this all took place. By the time Barry was 21 years old, he was already a very successful businessman. He was actually, at the time, the youngest member of the Los Angeles Stock Exchange. So he was doing really well for himself, had money, all the things. Then, after a car accident that he was in, he lost almost all of his money. He was penniless, and he became addicted to painkillers. And so he just kind of wanted to find a way to make that money, or make any money, really. So pretty soon he kind of caught wind of the whole kidnap for ransom ordeal in hopes of making money, right? So he thought it would be a good idea to go after Frank Sinatra's son, because of course Frank Sinatra at the time had a lot of money. So it was Barry, and he also invited 2 other men to help him. I'm trying to raise this shirt because I'm wearing a shirt, guys. I'm wearing a shirt. Alright. So it was Barry, and he enlisted 2 other men to help him. And their names were Johnny Irwin and Joe Amsler. Joe was there from the start. Johnny will come in a little bit later. Now, some articles I read suggested that Barry had a psychiatric condition, that he heard voices, and so, that played a part in his plan to come up with this kidnapping scheme. And so I'm mentioning it, but to be honest, I read that only in one article. But I just felt, it could be true, so I'm giving you all the information that I got. And so, because of the psychiatric condition, he apparently felt that his kidnapping plan was blessed by God. He apparently was planning to pay the money back to Frank Sinatra at a later date, and he did not think that the kidnapping was immoral because he planned to pay it all back. So I thought I would just mention that. So now let's talk about the day of the kidnapping. So Barry and Joe, they were former high school classmates, and for a few weeks they had been following 19-year-old Sinatra Jr. around, kind of planning and scheming and waiting for the right time to make their move. And like we said, their goal was to kidnap him and get as much money out of his father that they could. So the kidnapping itself took place on December 8th, 1963. And this was just a few days actually after President JFK was assassinated. So Sinatra Jr. he was entering the music scene, and he was playing a show at Harrah's Club Lodge in Lake Tahoe. So that's on the border of California and Nevada. Just to give you a visual idea. Around 9 p.m. that night, Sinatra Jr. was in his dressing room, just kind of resting, and he was with a friend. Barry knocks on the door around 9 p.m. and pretends to be a delivery man. He says he's delivering a package. So he kind of takes it upon himself to enter the room, and immediately their plan goes into effect. They tied up Sinatra Jr.'s friend first, and then they blindfolded Sinatra and took him out the side door and led him to their car that they had ready to go waiting. Just a few minutes later, luckily, Sinatra's friend was able to untie himself and get free, and alerted authorities as soon as he could. And again, it actually all happened very quickly. He alerted authorities. Roadblocks were set up in the area just in case the kidnapper couldn't get away. And actually, funny enough, but not really funny at all, Barry and Joe were actually stopped by police on their way out of the area, and they were somehow able to lie their way out of it and drive through. And they took Sinatra Jr. to They took Sinatra Jr. to their little hideaway spot that they had ready to go, and it was in like the suburbs of LA, in that area. By 9:40, not even an hour later, the FBI was brought on the scene. By 9:40 that same evening, the FBI was brought on the case, and I'm sure it played in his favor that his father was Frank Sinatra, and I'm sure that's why everything was happening so quickly. Shortly after that, agents met with Sinatra Sr. in Reno and the mother in, where was she? Bel Air, California. And so the FBI again told them, the motive is probably money. They're just trying to get money out of you. So they recommended that Sinatra Sr. wait to hear for a ransom, pay it, and then authorities would be able to track the money and find the kidnappers. So that was their plan. So now the following evening, Barry calls his other friend, Johnny Irwin, to bring him in on his little scheme. And Johnny was to be the person of contact when it came to the ransom and the handoff and whatever. He was the point of contact. So he actually called Sinatra Sr. and told him to await instructions. Sinatra actually offered $1 million, didn't even wait for a ransom, just said, I'm gonna give you $1 million, give me my son back. But Barry actually demanded significantly less and only asked for $240,000. Why, I don't know. In 2002 terms, just to give you an idea, the demand paid would have been equivalent to $2.32 million. And what Sinatra offered, again in today's terms, would be almost $10 million. 9.68 to be exact. That's a lot of money, and why he turned down the big amount, I don't know. It's a little weird when you think about it. So, on December 10th, Sinatra Sr. gathered the money and gave it to the FBI, put it in a briefcase, and they actually photographed the whole thing. And the FBI made the drop-off, following Barry's instructions that he gave them. And the drop-off was actually between 2 school buses in Savannah, California, I guess just to be more private, I don't know. So he had to meet in between 2 school buses, and the drop-off was early the next day on December 11th, so he was kidnapped and held for like 3 days. So while Barry and Joe went to go pick up the money at the drop-off, Johnny boy was getting a little nervous, and he freaked out and he let Sinatra Jr. go. And so Sinatra Jr. was found in Bel Air. He had walked a couple miles, and he was able to find a security guard. He alerted him, told him what happened, and to avoid press and the public eye, the security guard offered to put him in his trunk. So he went in the trunk of the patrol car and was taken to his mother's house in Bel Air. And when they started asking him questions, he was able to tell the FBI what he knew. He did see Joe and Barry's faces like once before they blindfolded him, and he didn't see the third man, he just heard his voice. Third man being Johnny. So it was a little hard for him to tell them everything, and I'm also sure it happened so fast. But it was hard for him to really give them details. Now, even though Sinatra Jr. was free and alive and fine, the FBI did not give up, and they kept trying to track down the kidnappers. So they were able to track clues back to the hideaway house, and then once they got to the hideaway house, they used fingerprints and things like that, and just were able to collect more evidence there. At this point, the case was in the press. It was public. People knew what happened, and I think that started to put a lot of pressure on the 3 gentlemen, and they really started to feel that pressure. And John seems to be I'm not excusing him, but he seems to be the sensitive one, because he was the one that let Sinatra Jr. go, and he was the one to break first and confess. So he actually told his brother what happened, and his brother immediately called authorities, or the FBI, specifically their office in San Diego. Hours later, Barry and Joe were captured and arrested, and also almost all the ransom was recovered, so that's good. Some actually thought that Sinatra Jr. actually came up with the whole thing as a publicity stunt, to get his name in the press and all the things. But the FBI was very adamant that they had enough evidence to prove that that wasn't the case at all. And honestly, I don't know much about him at all. Honestly, this is the first I heard about this from today, but I don't think that it was all for publicity. So Barry was sentenced to life plus I put a typo here. I don't know what that's supposed to say. Oh, he was sentenced to life. Wow, that's such a bad typo. He was sentenced to life, but ended up only serving 4.5 years. I think on the grounds announced that he was legally insane at the time of the kidnapping, so his lawyers went that route and he was able to be released, which is kind of crazy. And so after his release, he actually became a successful real estate agent. So I guess he did well for himself. The other 2 men were also convicted as well, because I know all 3 men were convicted. I don't know what ended up happening with their sentences. I don't know how much time they got. I'm really not sure. And just a few little fun facts for you. Like, literally all of this is new information to me. Apparently Showtime released a movie in 2003 called Stealing Sinatra about this. And in 2020, apparently it was announced that a biopic was being made called Operation Blue Eyes, and Barry would be played by Grant Gustin, again, to tell this story, which I love. Grant Gustin. Grant Gustin is the Flash. He was the Flash. Is the Flash. I never finished the show, so I don't know. But I also, that was almost 3 years ago, and I don't know what happened with that, unless I just completely missed it. So, but yeah, apparently this is a real thing that happened to Frank Sinatra's son. I am a huge Frank Sinatra fan. I love Frank Sinatra. I love his music. Actually, I don't love him. I don't really know anything about him as a person, but I like his music. So yeah, that's just a wild thing. So I thought that this was so interesting, so I thought that some of you would also find this interesting. I know it's maybe not as exciting or creepy or scary than my other true crime videos, but I just thought it was interesting and something that I learned today, so I wanted to share. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope that you enjoyed this video, and I will see you next time.